Week 7 Day 1. Implacable cannot be pacified. Inexorable sense. The detective was implacable in a search for the murder weapon. Sense. Implacable. Adjective. Slightly formal. Describes someone who has strong opinions or feelings, which are impossible to change. An implacable enemy. Implacable. Opposition. Hostility. Implacably. Adverb. Slightly formal. Paroxysm of fit. Sudden outburst. Sense. In a paroxysm of rage, the tenant stormed out of the landlord's office. Sense. Paroxysm. Noun. A sudden and powerful expression of strong feeling, especially one that you cannot control. In a sudden paroxysm of jealousy he threw her clothes out of the window. Paroxysms of laughter. Reprehensible. Worthy of blame. Sense. The brash student was forced to apologize for her reprehensible conduct. Sense. Reprehensible. Adjective. Formal. If someone's behavior is reprehensible, it is extremely bad or unacceptable. Reprehensible conduct. Actions. Reprehensibly. Adverb. Formal. Jurisdiction. Power, range of authority. Sense. Saying that it was beyond his jurisdiction. Judge Klein refused to rule on the case. Sense. Jurisdiction. Noun. The authority of an official organization to make and deal with especially legal decisions. The court has no jurisdiction over cases of this kind. School admissions are not within our jurisdiction. Skirmish. Small fight, brief encounter. Physical fight. Sense. The precocious copyright boy enjoyed an intellectual skirmish with his elders. Null. Sense. Skirmish. Noun. 1. A fight between a small number of soldiers, which is usually short and not planned, and which happens away from the main area of fighting in a war. 2. A short argument. There was a short skirmish between the political party leaders, when the government announced it was to raise taxes. Skirmish. Verb. Skirmisher. Noun. Cause. Clbre. A famous law case or controversy. Sense. It was a minor dispute, but the ambitious lawyer sought to turn it into a clbre. Much ado about a haircut. Perhaps you read about our school in the newspapers? We were one of the first to have a showdown on the topic of long hair for boys. 2 honor students, Ron Harris and Len Chester, were sent to the principal by their French teacher, an implacable foe of nonconformists, who went into a paroxysm of anger when she spied the boys in the hall. At first it seemed like a simple case. The school would reprimand the boys for their reprehensible appearance and order them to cut their hair or be suspended. But the boys' parents decided that the school had overstepped its jurisdiction. They took their case to the newspapers. What had started as a local skirmish now began to take on the appearance of a full-scale war. Week 7 Day 2. Harass. To trouble, torment. Sense. If anonymous telephone callers harass you, the phone company will give you an unlisted number. Sense. Harass. Verb. To continue to annoy or upset someone over a period of time. Stop harassing me. Harassed. Adjective. Anxious, annoyed and tired, especially because you have too many things to deal with. The supermarket was full of harassed-looking mothers with young children. Harassment. Noun. Behavior that annoys or upsets someone. Sexual harassment. Monolithic. Massively solid. Sense. George Orwell's 1984 depicts a frightening, monolithic government. Sense. Monolithic. Adjective. Disapproving. Too large, too regular or without interesting differences, and unwilling or unable to be changed. Monolithic. State-run organizations. Arbitrary. Based on whim. Dictatorial. Sense. To my mind the decision was unreasonable and arbitrary. Arbitrary. Adjective. Based on a desire or idea or chance rather than reason. Her outfit was an arbitrary choice but was just perfect. Arbitrarily. Adverb. We didn't think much about it, just arbitrarily decided to go to Italy. Arbitrariness. Noun. Disapproving. The arbitrariness of human nature infuriates me. Sense. Arbiter. Noun. Someone who makes a judgment, or solves an argument or decides what will be done. The arbiters of fashion taste. The government will be the final arbiter in the dispute over the new road. Indigent. Poor, needy. Sense. The indigent client was surprised when she was accosted by her social worker in the elegant restaurant. Sense. Indigent. Adjective. Formal. Very poor. Indigence. Noun. Fray. A fight, a conflict. Mentally. Conflict, argue. Language. Sense. After the fray, The feuding families agreed to patch up their differences since free cloth. Verb. To become or to cause the threads in cloth or rope to become slightly separated, forming loose threads at the edge or end. Denim phrase so easily. I'd frayed the edges of my jeans, as that was the fashion in those days. Frayed. Adjective. With the threads at the edge coming loose, frayed cuffs sense fray annoyed. Verb. If your temper frays or your nerves fray, you gradually become upset or annoyed. Tempers frayed as thousands of motorists began the Christmas holiday with long waits in traffic jams. Frayed. Adjective. The whole experience left me with frayed nerves, feeling anxious. Since the fray. Action. Noun. An energetic and often not well-organized effort, activity, fight or disagreement, with a third country about to take part in the fray. The fighting looks set to continue. A good holiday should leave you feeling refreshed and ready for the fray, ready to work again. Sense fray around at the edges. To start to become less effective or successful, without the unifying forces of the army and the monarchy, it seems, the nation would begin to fray at the edges. One swallow does not make a summer. Euros don't jump to conclusions based on incomplete evidence. Sense sure, the Yankees won their opening game, but one swallow does not make a summer. The tempest spills out of the teapot. Once the newspapers got the story, the case of the long hairs became a celebrity. Ron and Len were interviewed, seen on TV, and regarded by their fellow students as heroes. These are not delinquents or hoods, thug, troublemaker, one reporter wrote, but clean-cut American boys, who are being harassed by a monolithic school system. A caustic editorial referred to the school's decision as arbitrary and inane. A false story even circulated about the boys being rack-and-roll performers, whose indigent families needed their salaries. Finally, the Civil Liberties Union jumped into the fray with a court order stipulating that the principal be required to show cause why the boys should not be allowed to return to class. Week 7 Day 3. Stymie to hinder, impede. Sense cause of cancer continues to stymie. Doctors sense stymie. Verb. Often passive. Stymieing. Informal. To prevent something from happening or someone from achieving a purpose. In our search for evidence, we were stymied by the absence of any recent documents. Effigy. Likeness usually of a hated person. Sense coach of losing team hanged in effigy. Sense effigy. Noun. A model or other object which represents someone, especially one of a hated person, which is hung or burned in a public place. Crowds march through the streets carrying burning effigies of the president. Flout. Show contempt, scoff. Sense many motorists flout traffic laws. Study reveals sense flout. Verb. To intentionally disobey a rule, law, or custom. Many motorcyclists flout the law by not wearing helmets. The orchestra decided to flout convention tradition, and wear their everyday clothes for the concert. Cognizant. Aware. Sense FBI. Cognizant of clandestine gangland meeting. Sense cognizance. Noun. Formal or legal. Take cognizance of. Sth. To take notice of and consider something, especially when judging. The lawyer asked the jury to take cognizance of the defendant's generosity in giving to charity. Cognizant. Adjective. Formal. Unfortunately, we were not cognizant of, did not know about the full facts. Turbulent. Unruly, agitated. Sense turbulent atmosphere in angry Senate chamber. No. Sense turbulence. Noun. 1. A state of confusion and lack of order. The era was characterized by political and cultural turbulence. There are signs of turbulence ahead for the economy. 2. Strong sudden movements within air or water. We might be experiencing some turbulence on this flight due to an approaching electrical storm. Turbulent. Adjective. 1. Involving a lot of sudden changes, arguments or violence. A turbulent marriage. This has been a turbulent week for the government. 2. Turbulent air or water moves very strongly and suddenly. The sea was too turbulent for us to be able to take the boat out. A bitter pill to swallow. A humiliating defeat. Sense it was a bitter pill to swallow for the famous billiard player, to be overwhelmed by the 12-year-old girl. Haircut dilemma. The school authorities were stymied. Public opinion had been marshaled against them. No longer was it a simple case of disciplining two wayward lads. Suddenly it had taken on the appearance of a nightmare, in which the principal was either hanged in effigy or pictured in cartoons making a villainous at the two innocent Samsons. But the officials could not allow Ron and Len to flout their authority with impunity. Members of the school board concurred agree with the principal's action, but they were cognizant of the popular support for the boys. Clearly a compromise was called for to resolve the turbulent situation. Week 7 Day 4. Terminate to Since it seemed incongruous to terminate his employment just when he was so successful. Since terminate. Verb. Formal. To cause something to end or stop. They terminated my contract in October. This train will terminate at the next stop. Passengers who wish to continue should change trains. Termination. Noun. Formal. Forthwith. Immediately. Since upon seeing the show, he called the TV studio forthwith, to protest. Since forthwith. Adverb. Formal. Immediately. We expect these practices to cease forthwith. Exacerbate. To irritate, make worse. Since the arrest of the spy did much to exacerbate relations between the two countries. Since exacerbate. Verb. To make something, which is already bad, worse. This attack will exacerbate the already tense relations between the two communities. Exacerbation. Noun. Revert. Return. Since after taking the drug, she began to revert to the days of her childhood. Since revert to something. Phrasal verb. To return to doing, using, being or referring to something, usually something bad or less satisfactory. Why does the conversation have to revert to money every 5 minutes? Plus ing form of verb. When they divorced, she reverted to using her maiden name. Since revert to somebody. Phrasal verb. Legal. To become the property of a particular person again. When I die, the house will revert to my sister. Oust. To drive out, eject. Since the ushers moved with alacrity, to oust the disorderly patrons. Since oust. Verb. To force someone to leave a position of power, job, place or competition. The president was ousted from power in a military coup in January 1987. Police are trying to oust drug dealers from the city center. The champions were defeated by Arsenal and ousted from the League Cup. Ouster. Noun. Us. The removal of someone from an important position or job. The committee's chairperson is facing a possible ouster. An axe to grind. Having a selfish motive in the background. Since I am always dubious about the motives of a man who tells me that he has no axe to grind. Happy ending. Following an executive session, the school board ordered the principal to terminate the suspension, and to send the boys back to class forthwith. Unless it could be shown that their presence disrupted the learning process, there was no reason to bar the boys. It was a bitter pill to swallow for the principal, whose irritation was exacerbated by the ruling. But some of the sting was taken out of the victory, when the boys appeared in school the next day with their hair clipped to a respectable length. Everyone breathed a sigh of relief. Just as things were about to revert to normalcy, however, the same French teacher then demanded that a girl be ousted from school for wearing a mini-skirt. Week 7 Day 5. The reading of the will. 1 full week after the funeral, the immediate family of millionaire Charles Hudson was gathered in a law office to hear the reading of the deceased's will. Mr. Hudson's wife, 30 years his junior, was prepared for a bitter skirmish with his former wife and her son. The lawyer, Don Rollins, anticipated a turbulent session because he was the only one who was cognizant of the contents of the revised will that Hudson had ordered drawn up 6 months prior to his death. The current Mrs. Hudson, attired in her smart widow's weeds, expected that she would receive the lion's share of the estate. The former Mrs. Hudson felt that she was entitled to most of the estate, since she was practically indigent at the present time, despite one-half her substantial alimony superscript 1 payments. Lawyer Rollins cleared his throat and began to read, "To my present spouse I leave my townhouse, where she can continue to store the jewels, shoes, dresses, and furs she accumulated in 2 years of shopping and marriage. To my son, who has put off finding a career until my estate would enrich him, I leave the sum of $10 for a cab fare to the unemployment office. To my former wife, whose reprehensive behavior I tolerated for 3 decades, I leave my beach house, where she can continue to work on her tan, something that she prized above our happiness. To the Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals I leave the remainder of my entire estate, knowing they will put it to better use than anyone in this room. The lawyer was wrong. No outcries. Silence, supreme silence, reigned among the shocked audience. Null.